to Inside Personal Growth Podcast. Deep dive with us as we unlock the secrets to personal development, empowering you to thrive. Here, growth isn't just a goal, it's a journey. Tune in, transform, and take your life to the next level by listening to just one of our podcasts.
And welcome back to Inside Personal Growth. Jessica, I don't know what number show this is going to be, but last count I was at 1,050, so it's going to be somewhere about at 1,150 and 17 years. It's a pleasure having you join us from the south of France today. And what city are you in?
I'm just near Bayonne, so
Bayonne.
Southwest.
Southwest. Well, this lovely book called Intuition at Work, and the subtitle, because you probably couldn't read it, everybody, is Using Your Gut Feelings to Get Ahead. Some of the greatest people in the world talk about intuition at work. You can go out there and get quotes from Steve Jobs and Bill Gates and all kinds of people. And they say some of the guiding things that helped them in business was listening to their gut feeling, listening to their intuition. And so today, rejoining us, Jessica had a prior actual appearance on the show, but it was way long ago, and we're going to put a link to that podcast as well. But this show is about the Intuition at Work book, and I want to let our listeners know a bit about you. So she's an award-winning coach and author who works at CEO and the senior executive level. She runs seminars on harnessing intuition in the decision-making process. And I think that's a key, because, sometimes we don't have enough information to make the decision, so we've got to go to our gut. She's taught at some of the world's most prestigious business schools and is an honorary senior visiting fellow at Bayes Business School. She taught and supported over 15,000 executives over her career. And she's a regular speaker and media commentator. And she lives in France, as we said. And there's the book. So everybody go out and get it. Well, this thing called intuition, we all have it. The question is, are we tuning into it? It's like, hey, it's there, but am I really listening to that deep voice inside? Or am I hearing voices in my head? I used to hear things. I think some people are auditory, some people are kinesthetic, different ways they get this. I recently saw that a guy talk about he missed the plane that went down in Brazil or wherever it was, right? So the plane didn't make it. And he was happy that his intuition told him not to get on the plane, right? So your book emphasizes that intuition is a superpower in the workplace. Can you share some personal story where intuition, I think, significantly impacted one of your professional decisions or an outcome for you? Because if you're going to write about it, you got to live it yourself.
Totally. I was thinking, which one of the ones do I choose? And I think this one is quite a good one. It's about 20 years ago. I was at a major turning point in my life, and I was going, do I take this job? I have never been headhunted in my life. This was the only time that I was headhunted. And I was offered a really nice, big, juicy role. And it would have been on an exco. I'd have been traveling all over the world. And I got the job and I got the papers in. And for some reason, I just couldn't sign them. I just didn't sign them to send them back in. And by the way, I had negotiated for 12 weeks off a year, never coming in on a Friday. And that was quite unusual then. Anyway, while I was just going, I don't know why I'm not sending in these papers, I went to chat with my old boss and had a cup of coffee with him. And he said to me, Jess, just stay behind and you might like to meet my next guest, who turned out to be someone called Professor Michael Hay, who was teaching at London Business School. And Michael said to me, what are you doing? And I didn't say, I'm really hesitating about taking this job. I said, I'm setting up a practice as an independent coach. And he said, "Oh, we're looking for someone like you. Could you come in? I've got 10 days work immediately. If you fit, maybe they could be yours." And the rest of this is history. So for me, not signing those papers and listening to my intuition, which was like, I had this misalignment, internal misalignment about that job. And that's what had stopped me signing the contract, sending it back. But listening to that utterly reshaped my career. So I think that's a biggie.
Well, I think for our listeners, it's a big one, but at the same time, I went back to school and got a degree in spiritual psychology, and it was the best thing that I ever did. And the story that I would say is it really got me in touch with my intuition. I'm not certain that I was as in touch with it, but I realized how valuable it was to listen to it at the time, to actually take the course, right? To go back to school later in life and get a degree in spiritual psychology. So one of the things that you discuss, which I think is important, because there's this thing around discernment and intuition, right? I always said, well, how discerning are you? How are you really hearing this is the voice inside, or the feeling you're getting, or the gut feeling, or whatever? You discuss this concept of intuition bias in the book, right? How can leaders who are out there listening to this today recognize when they're relying too much on intuition, and how can they balance this with data-driven decisions? Because, look, we get data from everywhere now, ChatGPT, you name it, it's all over the place. But still frequently, the data alone can't help us make that decision about who we're going to hire or what we're going to do, because in the end, sometimes it's information overload.
Yeah, I wonder. I mean, I'm not sure that we haven't got a term intuition bias, and I'm wondering whether it should exist. Just in the same way we don't have a term for analysis bias, and I think that that's the real problem inside organizations, which is, hey guys, let's not listen to our gut, but let's keep pounding our heads on this one because the data says it should work out. So I actually think, if we had more of an intuition bias, it would be more helpful. But, again, when I started work, I remember one of the very first meetings I went into as a graduate trainee. And the boss at the end of the meeting said, slightly sneerily, well, what does the graduate think? And I started off, well, I'm feeling, and he cut straight in and he said to me, I'm paying you to think, not to feel. And so great. I like to say I've never had a feeling since.
Yeah.
But, that part of, what are we all feeling about this?
Right.
What's coming to mind for you when we're considering this decision? We don't do that. We don't really ask those questions. And the really interesting thing for me is that when I'm facilitating workshops, amongst other people who know each other really well or don't know each other at all, what they say is that the quality of the conversations that they have is very different when you say, right, really go into yourself. Now, where are you feeling this? What are you feeling? What is it bringing up to mind for you? What are the images, the sounds, the sensations you're getting? It's a very different kind of conversation. And it's quite an exciting conversation. And of course, you can go to your decision tree and you can drag out your spreadsheet and look at your performance dashboard. But it's not going to give you that qualitative feel that your intuition will.
You mentioned this about he paid you to think, not to feel. And I often wonder, about the sexes, because between a male and a female, it's always been understood that females are more intuitive, or at least that's what people think. I do believe when you balance the masculine and feminine, if you're a guy, like I've really tried to do, you can be extremely intuitive, and you can be extremely feeling, meaning having lots of feelings about things. And you said that in the introduction, you mentioned that intuition often remains in the broom closet.
Yeah.
I would think for many guys, it's in the broom closet. In a professional setting in particular, because they're like saying, well, this isn't a feeling I had. This is a decision I made on data. Why do you think intuition isn't more openly discussed or valued in the workplace? Because it really should be. And if all these great people like Bill Gates and Steve Jobs and Warren Buffett have all said intuition is just like the best thing in the world, why aren't we in the workplace taking hold of that?
I think you're completely right. There may be, there's something in it not being allowed, in inverted commas, because it's felt to be a less than response. It's felt to be maybe slightly lazy, a bit shameful, a bit like you've been caught cheating. So, I think that's one reason. I do, on the other hand, think that there's a lot of guys who are trying very much to bring it to the fore in their senior executive meetings. And so I interviewed one such delicious person, CEO Hal Reisiger, CEO of Cosworth. And he talked all the time about how to try and pull up his leadership team's ability to be intuitive, because it just gives you that extra dimension. So if you're only using analysis, it's half a conversation. But for those people who do want to pull it into a conversation, I would say that emphasize rational decision-making or problem solving. Yes, of course, we need to keep but we need to add this additional bit because it's so useful. And it's, 100 years since Freud said the intuitive mind is a sacred gift and the rational mind is a faithful servant. We've created a society that honors the servant and has forgotten the gift. And so it is the gift that it's helpful, it's useful. We know it works. There's one fantastic study that showed that leaders, managers, when forced in an experiment to use their intuition, were right 91% of the time. When naive investors were in Germany, there were only 16 of them. They were making investment decisions on a fake portfolio, but they were right almost 80% of the nearly 80 decisions that they had to make. Well, that is incredibly much better than chance. So is intuition always right? No. Is it better than chance? Absolutely, a ton more. But let's be honest, is analysis always correct? Absolutely not. That depends on what you programmed your spreadsheet with and the assumptions that you're making. So we've got a ton of evidence that it works and it works well. And I think it's part of my ambition is to show people this evidence and to show that when they use it, it's useful. And I think that having conversations about it is a very surefire way for us to help people realize what an incredibly, a spectacularly useful tool it is. It is a superpower, as you said.
Well, there's this whole spiritual element that comes up in play. That, I used to go to spirituality at work conferences. Judy Neal over here in the States used to put on these spirituality at work. And we would get in these philosophical discussions around intuition and so on. And I think when you look at the kind of people that showed up at those conferences who were interested in allowing people to bring spirit to work, right? The Richard Barretts of the world, right? The people that write about this and say how important it really is. I happen to be sitting next to the man who developed the Cliff bars. And Cliff is worldwide now for their nutritional bars. And he was just saying how important intuition was. So you describe intuition as this process that can be developed and accessed on demand. And this is where I'm going with this. Can you outline the steps that somebody could take to strengthen their intuitive abilities at work? Because what we're talking about here is one thing that's kind of a bit amorphous for some people. It's like, hey, it's intuition. I get that we have it, but I can't access it or I don't know how. And I think if you gave them the steps to help them develop it on demand, that would be really valuable.
The interesting thing for me is that people who say they haven't got an intuitive bone in their body are often the people who do it best, because they've got no expectation of it working. And so then they often could just go, whoop, straight there. So I think that's a fun thing. So I would challenge it. If someone who says, I don't have an intuitive bone in my body, I go, hooray, come on in.
You're going to be one of my subjects.
Right. Tell me about this thing. I think step one is to start noticing your reactions to something. So we're always told to actively listen to other people. Actually, I like to get people to actively listen and notice to themselves, because that's the way that you start going, okay, this is my response to this. This means good, this means bad. And there's a really nice exercise I do, which I could share with you now. Shall I share with you now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So I get people just to identify something that they really love, and just to shut their eyes and it could be a person, a place, a thing, green bun, just something that they really love, mountain, dog, whatever, child. And to go into your body and shut your eyes and to really think about this thing that you love. And if you can swell those feelings of love, to just make them much, much bigger. And to notice where they are in their body. So to notice where they're showing up, those feelings. And then to notice the energy that's associated with that feeling of loving this thing. And to try and magnify it a little bit more to see if you can dial it up. And then we stop the exercise. And then people say to me things like, I felt my heart open. I felt all my energy kind of get calm. I felt joyful. I felt that like I wanted to do something. I felt like I wanted to be there. I felt motivated to do, So we share all this stuff. I've had one person say they felt their shoulders tingling. So, and it's really fun to share cues in a room, because then people go, oh, I wonder if I could notice that for myself another time. And then I say, okay, that's great. So these are all your cues for this is a good thing. So notice that when you're feeling these feelings and somebody else is speaking, that's your physicality telling you this is a good thing. And then I say, right, now we're going to do something different. I'd like you to re-access the thing that you told yourself you just love, and tell yourself now, you hate that thing. And I get people to close their eyes and tell themselves, you hate that thing that you've told yourself you just love. And what's happening in your body? Where are you feeling it? What are you noticing? What's happened to your energy? And then you open your eyes. And Greg, I noticed that you were doing it. So is there any response that you had to doing that?
Well, in the part about loving it, it was a pet, and a pet that I adore. But when you said to hate it, I found like I was very repulsed by it. Like, oh, yeah, no, I don't even want to go there with that particular feeling.
You didn't want to go there. So people report things like, my throat closed. I couldn't do it. I wasn't, my mind went blank. Things went dark inside my head. My heart shrank. I felt angry with you. I get lots of people say, oh, I'm really frustrated with you.
Yeah.
Telling me to do this thing.
Yeah. Why would you do that to me?
Right. Don't do this to me. So I was make that bit last a bit less time. And that is your aversion. That is your physicality and your body and your mind telling you no. So when you feel that, so when your boss says to you, I want you to do X, and that's the way you react, that is your no. So these are just cues that you can then start to take. So recognizing your own cues and how and where they show up is the most important thing, because sometimes this stuff will just come out of nowhere, and if we can't recognize it, we can't then use it. So this is how we start to go, okay, I'm recognizing my yes and my no, and now when someone else is speaking, I'm just going to tune into what's this telling me. I also like people to start thinking, okay, what are they connecting with in their real space? So some intuitive stuff. So for example, let me give you a real one here. I was chatting with my friend Julie in Los Angeles, and I said to her, Julie, I'm just going to tell you this. I keep being drawn to my screensaver, and my screensaver is, it was a photograph at that time of a pair of feet in the sand. My husband and I had got up early, gone for a walk on the beach, and there was just this one pair of feet in the sand that tracks we were following. We couldn't see anybody, but it was cute. And I took a photograph and put it as my screensaver. And I said, I just thought, yeah, they keep being drawn to this. And she went, oh my goodness. I know I'm having a moment with my partner, and we're going to go for a walk on the beach later to try and sort ourselves out. So, you know, what's your attention being drawn to? Because it might be giving you some information in your environment that is useful in the situation that you happen to be in. So
I always remember, and pardon me for interrupting, but I had a gentleman on here who's quite famous wrote a book on signs and symbols. So things we see, a stop sign, a billboard, something written somewhere, that a lot of times we'll just kind of walk by it and we don't really pay much attention to it. Or things that are going on in our body that we're not paying attention to as well, which are being manifested as a result of something potentially deeper, right? Whatever that might be. Now, for some people, they go, well, that's woo-woo. You know, that's just the way it is. But I think if they're willing to explore, especially this book, Intuition at Work, and bring this to work, you can find out how wonderful it can be. Now, one of the things is intuition in high pressure situations where somebody has to make a quick decisions are needed, right? How can professionals who are out there listening to you and I cultivate the skill to ensure they could rely on the intuition in critical moments, you know, like high pressure moments or whatever? So, you know, you can imagine there's plenty of them that people are plagued with. The question is how do they discern that what they're feeling is better than the data they're receiving from other sources?
Well, I think if you constantly go against intuition and the data they're receiving from other sources is right, and they haven't listened to it, well, my God, you know that. I mean, you experience that pretty fast. And, you know, I'm a member of the human race too, and I did exactly that 2 weeks ago. I had a very strong intuition not to do something. I did it anyway, and it blew up absolutely in my face. Pay attention. So I think that the first thing is you can't use your intuition in a high pressure situation if you've never used it in a low one. Mm-hmm. So I remember ages ago talking to someone who is a VC investor, and he said, I'm never going to give anyone $1 million if he hasn't asked me the time of day. So I need to be giving, or my opinion, you know, I need to be giving something small before I do something big. And it's the same with intuition. You need to make a relationship with this thing. And if you've never had a relationship with it, you won't trust it in a high pressure situation. Right. So my advice would be, other than to get my book, is to use it in lower risk situations where you can then check out, you know, were you right? Were you correct? And to not really beat yourself up. You know, if you're going, oh, well, you know, I'm going to be tripping over a stool today, and you stub your toe on a table, and okay, you know, you're pretty close. So but for my money, it's better to be more non-specific. So go into what's going to go on in this room, What am I feeling in this room? Okay, there's good mood, there's bad mood. Where's that coming from? And just see, and then you can check it out easily. Because you can say, hey, Greg, it seems to me that you were in really good spirits today. And you, Greg, will then verify whether you were or you weren't. You weren't in that meeting. You know what I mean? So you get something easy. Go with what's easy.
Yeah.
Before you
Yeah. I think that's great advice. And one of the things that has been written about quite extensively is this connection between the heart and the gut, right? And we know that there is a very strong connection, right? And you were talking about these physical sensations and the gut feelings we get. The question I would say is it actually coming from the heart and being guided down to the gut? And can you explain how these concepts really kind of intersect with intuition, and how can they be harnessed in the work environment? I know there are times when our heart races, right? And then we get a real funny feeling in our gut, right? Because that is a natural sensation, because it's either fear that's doing that or it's love. But usually it's one of the two. When somebody's madly in love, the heart can race and you're getting these funny sensations all throughout your body. Or if you're afraid of someone or something, the fear can do that as well. Speak how we could use these sensations in the work environment, especially the one around fear, to avoid any things we might want to avoid.
Well, I think, I was once in a hiring situation and I was the second interviewer. And I was interviewing this woman and she came in and I just went, huh? I think she's pregnant. And I think she's just pregnant. And of course, you're not allowed to ask, are you pregnant? Hello.
Right.
It's not a question that you could do. And it means you're being bad for the job, right? It was just, something that was part of it. It would impact the role. Anyway, so I said to her, is there any reason that in a year's time from now, you'd want the role to look any different? And which was, a little bit close to the edge there. But anyway, and she said, what do you mean? I said, don't worry, forget about it. But it meant that I was right. I was totally right. We did hire her. She was pregnant. And I was completely right. I said, she's 3 weeks pregnant.
And she ended up being a good employee.
She was great.
Yeah.
So, that was just, I cannot, how did I get that? I don't know. But it was just this sudden and it came. And I felt totally aligned with my thought. So for me, I know that the physical sensations are useful when I feel aligned with a yes, or this sense of misalignment with a no. So I think that that's the important thing, is that the misalignment is the intuition. The alignment is the intuition. Mm-hmm. And it should make you feel, so these physical sensations should then make you feel, like you say, a sense of relief or calm or joy, and just knowing. So I describe intuition as a feeling of knowing. So you have the sensation part, but you have the cognitive part as well, because it is like this.
The knowing part, people speak about, Jessica, is it a belief or is it a knowing? I've had this debate so many times. When you have a knowing, it's like I don't want to say it's permanent, but it is kind of like this real strong feeling of permanency around a knowing versus a belief. Our beliefs change a lot, right? It's like, hey, they can go out when somebody convinces me of something else, right? And in the book, you discuss the importance of balancing intuition with other forms of thinking. In this case, like logical and analytical thinking, which many people do, especially engineers, especially software engineers. in programmers because that's the way they're programmed. Okay. How can professionals know when to trust the intuition? So even an engineer will get intuition. My son's an engineer for Adobe. I know sometimes he will listen and go down a different path over more traditional decision-making methods, because sometimes you get these hunches when, look, everybody thinks, oh, well, we have this thing here, this cell phone. We've gotten so used to these things, and we think, well, how many iterations do you think it took Apple to come up with that cell phone? Or how many people do you think actually the cell phone itself there's a 93 or 94-year-old man, I'm trying to think of his name because he's a friend of a client of mine who actually invented the cell phone. And at the time, I think he was with Motorola. And he still lives in Malibu. And so you think about the iterative process that somebody went through in making decisions to change something or move something or do something or design something or scientifically do this or put a chip here or do that. And you're thinking to yourself, my goodness, how many times did they actually use intuition to actually make that process? And many of them will tell you they used intuition a lot.
Absolutely. And scientists the same. So the people that you think the least intuitive people are frequently the most. So, you'd think it would be an entirely rational process, but it isn't. So I think that what you're...
Well, did you ever follow, and you should have, because your origins are English, right?
Yes.
A gentleman by the name of Bohm?
Yes.
Okay. So here's somebody who really believed in the strength and power of intuition, right?
And I think that when things are uncertain and the situation is uncertain, it's absolutely ripe for intuition. So, when you're creating something new, it's very uncertain. Uncertainty is inherent in the process. So it's absolutely ripe for intuition, just like job hiring is, strategy. So anything creative is wrapped into intuition. Is wrapped into it. And, architects talk actually about, I interviewed a couple I didn't put them in the book because I put someone else in. But they talked, for example, about buildings arriving whole in their brain. And J.K. Rowling talks about her whole Harry Potter thing, just arriving whole like that. So this creative process, which is got this uncertainty built into it, it's fabulous for intuition. So are volatile circumstances, ambiguous circumstances, complex circumstances. So that is, bring in your intuition, use it.
That's a huge download when somebody like that gets it all at once. And you have to think to yourself, there is something mystical, spiritual about those experiences. And you mentioned that intuition often improves our experience, and I would agree with you. What advice would you give to younger professionals? So we're talking about Gen Z, that kind of person, who may have the same level, it may not have the same level of experience, but they want to tap into these intuitive abilities. Because it's a multi-generational workspace that we all work in today. So what advice would you give those younger people?
Go and have a load of conversations with some older folks who have been doing it and find out what it is that they did. So you could have really interesting conversations about that. And then to think about the times when they have had intuitions and they have been right. Because I think just because they're younger doesn't mean that they've never had any intuitions. The question is, have they learned to trust it? So I get people to think about intuitions that they've had in other contexts. And they don't need to tell me what the contexts were, but just how the intuition showed up for them. And so think about it outside work. And then if they want to play with it, so to learn to use it more, I think this shouldn't be an effortful thing. It should be a fun thing. And so, go on some dates, do some intuiting around the dates that you're going to go on, and find some challenges on Insta or TikTok, because there are plenty of people that you can hunt out and follow and do their intuitive challenges.
Yeah, and so the advice you're providing is good advice, especially to have them go speak with somebody who's a bit older than them and speak with them about intuition and how they've utilized it over the years, or in that case, maybe not, but to go to many people to speak about it, because I'm sure everyone would have a comment. I remember when I was doing the research for my book, I went out to software engineers in particular because I wanted to see how this community actually dealt with intuition. And it's really interesting. Some of them would completely kind of disavow it, say, oh, yeah, I don't believe in it. And many of them would go, oh, yeah, I'm using my intuition every day in the design process or whatever. So your book tackles a toolkit to kind of tackle what we call the common blocks to intuition. What are some of the most significant barriers that people face when trying to access intuition, and how can they overcome them? And I'll make my own comment here, because when you actually are able to, in this case, when you're actually able to like get in a spot of mindfulness, meditation, contemplation, someplace in silence, you frequently will pick up this vibration, this intuitive vibe, okay? And I always tell people, and this is my own advice from having written my own book, that when you give yourself that opportunity, it's like you open up a pathway. And I'm going to say, just my listeners understand me, it's like coming through your crown chakra, right? So it comes through you, just like J.K. Rowling. You said it downloaded, you said it just came through her. And I think you have to be receptive to that. And some people are. And so what would you tell them to remove the barrier?
Yes. So be open to being open is numero uno. I mean, it's so easy to sit and go, no, I've tried that, it didn't work, when people haven't really. So numero uno is take yourself to some places and spaces where you have just got time to listen and tune in with yourself. And I know that that's incredibly hard in today's working life. But if you can, I don't believe that you can when you've got 40 emails to try and respond to in 2 hours' time, and a report to write, and something that you need to give to somebody else, etc. That have no time for it. So my first place to go to would be make some time. It doesn't need to be a lot of time, but if you can't ever tune into, okay, I'm standing back here, oof, big breath, what's really going on underneath this, you just won't get there. So I think maybe one other piece of advice, just to go back to the young folk, would be if I was in position of my boss, what decision would I be making right now, and what might inform that? And then you can just see, you can go to your boss and say, hey, I was thinking about these things. Tell me about how you made your decision. And I think that's exactly what you can do in this situation. You can kind of quasi-play with decisions that you're not having to make, but that other people are making in order to practice. Because getting the time to try is a block, or just saying, no, I'm not going to do it now, So trying. And maybe do that on the way home, because if you're driving home, you're in the car, your kind of mind is semi-occupied anyway. And when your mind is semi-occupied, it's a great time for intuitions to pop in. Just like, when you're in the shower going for a run or chopping vegetables. And that leads to kind of the second way of getting unblocked is, we block ourselves by going, okay, intuition, come on in, bring it on. Okay, nothing's here.
Yeah. So you're trying to force it. It isn't something that can be forced. It's something that happens for you, not to you. And so what I say is that, be open, like she's saying, be open and be receptive to it, and find places where you can be, in places where it allows you to open up to it, whether that's
Yeah.
on the beach or it's in a yoga class or it's meditation or being mindful or cutting the vegetables or whatever, because it's going to happen. And you have to not brush it away, but really give it some thought. What was that, right? And I say to people, take time to analyze it. And then, as you said, on least risky things, apply it and see how it works. And you'll find out that this in here works. Try it at work. We call it work, intuition at work. Now, in concluding our interview here, technology has become everybody's partner. We're using it right now with Zoom to do this call. And in particular, in the last probably 9 months, a huge evolution with AI. And it's becoming more integrated in the workplace. We see it everywhere now. It's on this software, it's on that software, it's on this. How do you see this role of the human intuition evolving? And how can it coexist with this AI just driven decision making that a lot of people are becoming dependent on, or one that potentially could ultimately dominate? Because, you can go to ChatGPT and ask it anything, and it's going to pretty much give you an answer. And the question is, are you now relying on that as your intuition, or are you I understand that. I understand not.
AI uses what is. It doesn't use what isn't. So AI will never be able to say to you, take this job, invest in that project, choose this partner, make these life decisions. AI can't do that for you because it's only working with what is. It's not working with what isn't. And so,
invisible.
Yes. And so your intuition, for me, it's part of your unique competitive advantage. So, but this is the reason that you should hone it. So AI there will always be another tool, another something. And of course, you need to learn to use AI and use it well, and to learn how to engineer your prompts so that you get the best conceivable answers out of the AI that you're using, because lazy prompts are going to give you lazy answers. But intuition is the thing. 99% of CEOs say they use it. Yeah, that's 99%. So if you really want to get yourself to the top, intuition is going to be one of those tools that will help take you there. What else? So it's going to help you with your success. It's going to mean speedier decisions, less time wasted, fewer mistakes. And you'll take people on a journey with you when you do that.
I think just trust it, Jessica. So go try it, trust it. You can get this book. We're going to have a link to Amazon. Also, if you want to learn more about Jessica, because she's been doing this for a long time, folks. This isn't her first book here. It isn't her first rodeo. Go to website, and that's WEBPSYCHED.com. There you can learn more about her. We're also going to put a link to that. We'll put a link to Amazon, to the book at Amazon, so you can get the book. We're also going to be completing a thing in Brain Bump for Jessica, so you'll be able to actually access that on our YouTube. And she's also going to be on our Wise Notes. So please look for those as well, because there'll be 2 other areas that you can learn more about the book and get like a summary version of this book. So all of you who are listening right now, check out website, go to our YouTube channel, go to Jessica's website, and obviously there'll be a link to Amazon. Jessica, you have brought out the intuition again in me this morning. Namaste to you. Thank you so much for reminding me to tap into it. It's always good to have someone just be a little bit of a nudge or a reminder to take some time to do it. And I think because all of us think we're so busy, we frequently decide we don't have the time. And really, this doesn't take that long. I mean, you can drop in a matter of 2 or 3 minutes, should you give yourself that opportunity to do so. Otherwise, you're just going to continue to block it out. So kudos to you for a wonderful new book. Everybody go out and get it. Any last words you have for our listeners, Jessica?
Yeah, they can also find me on LinkedIn if they want to connect. And if they've got any questions, please, LinkedIn is the easiest way to get me. And it's just to say, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much. I'm honored to be with you here again.
And I'm honored to have you back on, and we'll put a link to that LinkedIn for you as well. Take care, Jessica. Have a good rest of your evening in France.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this podcast on Inside Personal Growth. We appreciate your support. And for more information about new podcasts, please go to InsidePersonalGrowth.com or any of your favorite channels to listen to our podcast. Thanks again, and have a wonderful day.